Eto na, isa-isa na sila gumagawa ng paraan para hindi tuluyang umupo sa pwesto si Bongbong Marcos kung sakaling manalo sa susunod na eleksyon 2022. Ayon kay dating Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio na siyang kapartido ni Vice President Leni Robredo, may posibilidad daw na madisqualify si BBM sa pagtakbo bilang presidente sa susunod na taon 2022 dahil daw may tax evasion case daw siya. Panoorin mo ang video na ito upang malaman mo ang plano nila kay BBM. Please subscribe para makakuha ka ng 25 oras na balita para sa'yo.
That based on that, that amounts to moral turpitude, which should be basis to disqualify Ferdinand Marcos Jr. from the elections. My question is there precedent for this? Is this established or is this still just legal theory at this point?
Well, there have been many candidates who were disqualified because when they filed their certificates of candidacy, it turned out that they had a prior conviction involving moral turpitude or involving imprisonment of more than 18 months. No? Madami na yan. You have Halosos, you have Aratea, ang dami na. So it's established that the provision has been applied several times. The question here is, since Marcos Jr. Was imposed a penalty of 3 years on 2 counts each, but the Court of Appeals removed the imprisonment and only left the fine. So he would not fall under that provision where the sentence is imprisonment of more than 18 months. But there is an or the offense involved moral turpitude. And moral turpitude is a broad term, no? And that will be for the COMELEC initially and for the Supreme Court to decide if the failure to file income tax returns for several years repeatedly constitutes moral turpitude. My opinion is, if it's just 1 year, you can say it's not moral turpitude. Nakalimutan mo lang. Because there is no intent to evade. There is moral turpitude if there is intent to evade payment of the tax. But if you repeatedly fail to file it consecutively for several years, it would look like there is an intent to evade payment of the tax. So nasa COMELEC yan, and ultimately nasa Supreme Court and Bank to decide if it falls under that phrase, moral turpitude, no? If there was an intent, if repeatedly failing to file your income tax returns constitute moral turpitude.
Okay, so everything
sa kanila yon.
Yeah, so everything now.
I would say, pag nakalimutan mo lang 1 year to file, walang moral turpitude. There is no clear intent to evade. Pero pag palagi yan, several years, sunod-sunod, baka may moral turpitude yan. Nasa discretion na ng court yan. Nasa appreciation na nila yan.
In case of somebody among the candidates file, or it can be anybody, or will it be the COMELEC or what? Paano yan?
Or isang
Any
bayan.
registered voter, because the candidate is a candidate for a national office, so it's any registered voter in the Philippines can file. And there is a time period.
With the COMELEC? With the
Yes,
COMELEC?
you have to file it with the COMELEC.
Yes.
Sir, diretso ko na, sir.
And if
Would that be you? Kasi
There will be many who will file.
Is there a precedent for this?
Madami. Remember, there was a petition to cancel the certificate of candidacy of FPJ on the ground of citizenship, also of Grace Po on the ground of citizenship. You file it within 25 days from the time they filed their certificate of candidacy. So Marcos Jr. filed his certificate of candidacy October 6. So you have until October 31 to file, but 31 falls on a Sunday, so it's the next working day, which is November 2.
malapit na yun.
Commissioner Louis Guia, I think was doing you one better. He said na actually kung tama lahat yan, it is simply
kung finality, with finality
diba?
ang decision.
May finality in decision executory. He was saying, ano na lang yan eh.
Virtually
Administrative duty na lang ng COMELEC yan eh. Do you agree?
But you have to file a petition. Somebody, a registered voter, any registered voter in the Philippines can file and they'll have to decide that before the election. No?
Declaration.
Because
before
because
the
one
elections.
basic
Okay.
question po, none of us here have ever filed to Rapid and so on.
And
So
swear,
that should have been faithfully
Oo nga.
and with good faith filled in, di ba?
That is not you attest that you are eligible for the office. Now, eligible for the office has been defined by the Supreme Court as you are not disqualified. You have all the qualifications and none of the disqualifications. So if you were convicted by final judgment, you are disqualified. And if you state there that you are qualified, you sign, that is a material
Perjury.
misrepresentation. That is a false material representation, ground for cancellation of your certificate
But I
of candidacy.
cannot in good faith saying that I didn't know that a prior conviction would have disqualified me.
Well, if you were accused, I don't see how you can argue that you didn't know.
Yes, sir. But he can also argue, conversely, he can also argue that that proves that this was a crime involving moral turpitude.
That's his defense. An election return does not involve moral turpitude. Yun yung defense niya.
Okay.
Ang
So
problema,
that will be the issue.
And now you're also bringing up the idea that there's only until Tuesday to act on this issue.
Well, alam na naman file. So sabi ko, bahala kayo.
and you're saying required of comment.
They have to decide that before election day.
Normally.
And what if it's appealed with the Supreme Court?
The petitioners can go to the Supreme Court to appeal.
And that can take a lot of time beyond.
Certificate of candidacy, the doctrine is that certificate of candidacy is void
Null and
from
void.
the very start. It is as if you were never a candidate. So bura lahat.
People cannot vote.
Bilangin.
Hindi siya
Hindi
hindi,
bibilangin.
hindi bibilangin. Kasi iniisip
Kung
ko,
natuloy siya, natuloy kasi the decision came out late after the election, then
Yes.
the votes will be considered stray votes, void, and since
Well,
as if hindi siya tumakbo kasi
Yeah.
it's a void certificate of candidacy, burado yon. Pag isa lang kalaban niya, yung isa lang ang i-declare.
COMELEC
That is the
is
win.
not supposed to count. Kasi yun ang importante. The COMELEC should not count the votes for him.
Hindi, pag wala pang decision, siyempre, ibibilangin.
Kasi yan ang iniisip
Pero kung-
ko. Kapag nangyari yon, na binilang yon, sasabihin, halimbawa, let's say manalo siya. Sasabihin, well, the people have spoken eh.
Yes.
Well, but there are cases ganyan, na bilang, but dumating yung decision, binura lahat, considered void. That's the jurisprudence.
Medyo,
Of course, kasi presidential election ito, it's a national election. The COMELEC and the Supreme Court, I'm sure, will act on time.
Okay.
Pero sir,